Hello, everybody. It's August the 30th. My name is Jennifer. And the work I do now, the paid work that I do now, is quantum healing hypnosis technique, Dolores Cannon's work. And there's a lot of us doing Dolores' work now, or variations thereof. And there's a connection between this work that many of us are doing and the Jesus and the Essenes material. So I'm not allowed to read the book for you, but I can talk to you about my experience and the book and how there's describe as much as they can share the link between the two. So what I found happening as I was reading the book, as I got toward the middle of the book and just before I stopped, I found that I was getting, there was more coming through than simply me reading the words. And that's the bit I would like to share with you. So I'm going to go back a little bit and give you a tiny bit of history, and given my higher self the reins right now to keep it as short and concise as possible, because I don't want to waffle on when there's no need. So I'm going to do this, I'm going to close my eyes so I'm not distracted with the road that runs along, 500 yards out that way, and the noise and the beautiful sunshine, which feels so good, warm now on my neck here. So I'm going to close my eyes and hopefully give you as concise as possible the information that came last night that I need to share. And remember when I finished the last video that I did regarding Jesus and the Essenes, telling you that the information I got was that that book and the information in it, it wasn't really important to share that now, which is why I started doing what I did, reading it. And I'm not going to read the book again. Of course, I've actually given the book away to spread the information, to let it go further that way, giving of my book to somebody else. But I can tell you a couple of key points that are important right now going forward, and that it may resonate with you. So please take what resonates, and what doesn't, of course, click on to something else that does. For the highest good, always for the highest good of as many as possible, let's share now what I can that may be of assistance. This one has worked in communications most of her life, and taught first aid and taught the communications segment. And she was introduced just before she retired to another type of communications. And the information we gave her this morning that she tried to record, but her recording unit, we would rather have her come here and share it through the energy the bigger energy that's available when you are in space with somebody able to see, as much as we can share through this platform. Jennifer was introduced to we say past lives, but they're not actually past. And in a reoccurring dream that happened repeatedly for her as she was small up until her adulthood quite recently. And the dream was, or the segment that she saw was her as a little girl, maybe 5, in a dark, narrow cobblestone street, rain coming down, The little dress she had on is skin tight, it's in tatters, and she's cold. And her mother lets go her hand and walks away from her around this corner, up this grade in the cobblestone street. And her mother doesn't come back. And she's left there. And she's crying. And as she's crying and getting more and more anxious and worked up, because her mother's not there with her, she wakes. And this is a dream fragment that we showed her through her younger years repeatedly, and up until maybe she was 35 or so, or 40. Now, her mother in this lifetime would say to her when she misbehaved or did something that her mother wasn't able to cope with, her mother would say, when she was there alone with her, she would repeatedly say, "Now you got to be good or I'm going to go away and leave you. Be good or I'm going to go away and leave you." So that amplified the anxiety of the dream and being hungry and cold and not having enough. And so that's what she's been working through thread by thread. So that was the dream segment she was shown initially. Fast forward to when her body went through the change of the lack of estrogen and moving into the time where you actually look after yourself more, finally, instead of always looking after other people, menopause they call it. She had difficulty sleeping. And the part of a thread of her family background was her father's grandmother, her father's grandmother was a midwife and a herbalist, and her mother's grandmother was Mi'kmaq, and of course those two threads have left her with a strong interest in plants and healing and plant medicine and the energy of plants, herbs. So two of her older sister-in-laws, she has three older brothers, and two of her older sister-in-laws recommended, as she was getting close to menopause, recommended healing women's bodies. I can't remember the title right now. She can't remember the title. By Christiane Northrup. And Christiane Northrup was a gynecologist who, as she got older herself, started gathering information to give women an opportunity to heal, to look after their bodies as they went through the change. And so she read those books, the two books that are, the same book that two of her sister-in-laws gave her. And between that and the herbal studies, and she'd been interested in plants and studying the properties of plants her whole life. So when menopause came and she had difficulty sleeping, she went to her family doctor at the time and told him what was going on. She needed some help sleeping, and she was looking for hormone replacement therapy, the natural, the bio-available stuff that's available, as opposed to pregnant horse urine. And the doctor nodded, and he said, "Yeah, there's something that can help you." And he took his prescription pad out, and that was a bit of a flag for her. And as he started writing on the pad, she asked him what it was that he was prescribing for her. And he said, "Well, it's something that's going to help you sleep." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "It's a type of a low-dose antidepressant." And in that life as a child, she eventually, when she started studying QHHT, found Dolores Cannon, started studying QHHT, she went to a level 3 practitioner, Marilyn Dyke, down in Maple Ridge in British Columbia, and had a session. And the first thing they showed her was that life that she saw the reoccurring dream segment for. And in that life, she was found screaming in the street by this woman who they brought her to this kitchen where all these women were for this big house, and she took shelter there, and they gave her clothing and looked after her, and eventually she was running that kitchen and helping others. And one of the others that she was helping is a friend of hers in this lifetime that she met when she came here to British Columbia. And that person, while Jennifer knew her, was struggling trying to get off antidepressants. So when the doctor recommended the antidepressants, between all of it, she was like, "Oh, no," walked out. So when she walked out of the doctor's office not wanting antidepressants, she explored herbal solutions. And this is before she understood the energy of the body can heal when you're in the divine flow and there's no blockages going on. You can be in a space where you can heal yourself. But at that time, she was looking for herbal support for her body to help her sleep, to help her body feel like it could cope. And she did black cohosh, and she did different herbs and supplements. And through that exploration, she found Dr. Andrew Saul, who is one of the heads of orthomolecular medicine in the U.S. And he studies, orthomolecular medicine is the study of how our body is supported by food nutrients and vitamin nutrients, supplements. And so she's followed his work and picked up a movie or a documentary that he made called That Vitamin Movie, and brought vitamins into her life at that point. And between that vitamin movie and supplementing and cleaning up her diet, and she went to a lady in Courtney who had what is called a Lucia, Lucia, Lucia 3 light. And she did multiple sessions with her. And that Lucia 3 light is a preliminary to the scalar wave technologies. It operates in a similar way. And that, going for those sessions, for the first session, there was a huge shift for her, and she started studying Dolores Cannon. So there was the Lucia 3 light, and she did a Reiki session and then immediately started studying Reiki, and now she's a level 2 Reiki practitioner. And she had iridology done and live blood analysis done. And between all of it, she started to heal her body and heal her energy and her outlook, and then found Dolores almost immediately afterwards. Because what I just described to you happened within maybe a 2-month period of finding the Lucia 3 light, Reiki, iridology, live blood analysis. So we'll back up a bit. Let's go back to, she was doing shift work with Coast Guard as a communications officer. And just before she retired, I don't know when it was. The year is not really important. As she was doing this healing for herself, she had another dream where she woke, or she realized she was in a graveyard in the dark. And it was a bit of a moon, like you could see a little bit. There was enough light that she could see like the headstones and the ground, but it was it was in the night. And she looked around herself and was like, well, what am I doing here? And she saw a pleasant-looking ghost just get up, sit up off the ground and walk towards her. And it was a man, an older man. And she talked to some of her colleagues at work about this. The dream was profound. The old man, as he walked towards her, she had said, well, what am I doing here? And hello, is there anybody that needs any help? And when she asked that, this man walks at the grave nearest her, sits up, gets up, and I don't remember if he dusted himself off, but he was, you could see through him, but he was dressed in like pants and a shirt and, respectable looking, not dirty or haggard or zombie looking or any of that nonsense. And as he walked towards her, she understood that he wanted to share something with her. And he was doing this, I don't know if you can see this, he was doing this with his hands. He was rubbing something. He was rubbing his hands. And I said to him in my mind, how can I help you? And he said to her, I need you to share with everybody how important touch is. He said, when my wife was alive, I used to rub her feet. And people have forgotten how important touch is. And as he was telling me, Jennifer, this, there was a young girl I noticed out of the corner of my eye had got up, and she was probably 8 or 9, and she had It looks like she was dressed from the 40s or 50s, going to a party. She had a pretty dress on. She was like a tight top part, and then it was out, poofed out in the skirt, like a party dress would have been for somebody that had money in the 40s or 50s. And she was lining up behind him, and behind her there was an older woman, sort of bent with a nightdress on. And as I was listening toward what he was telling me, there was queues of people lining up to share what they wanted to share. And when he was finished his story, I felt myself being dragged backwards, away from the scene. And I said, I'm not done yet. I'm not done. There are people that need help. Why are you taking me now? And as I was being yanked back, I felt myself being drawn away from the scene, pulled away, and I was waving my hands frantically, saying, I'll be back. I'll be back. And I woke up, of course. And that's just, there's been many examples, many dreams that they've showed me just before I wake, where it's a learning moment. So I never did get back to that graveyard. But what happened after that, just before I retired, menopause was happening and I was having trouble sleeping. And at that time, I had, in my home, I had my screen that I used to watch YouTube videos and different things on. Never had cable. I had that up on an arm on the wall. And so that was up on the wall, and I was on the couch. And I was looking for, a few years prior, when I was at work, I was telling you how old I am, or how old she is. I was giving the reins to the higher self. I want this to be short and as concise as possible. Sorry, folks. So, I'm sitting on the couch and I'm scrolling through YouTube looking for a guided meditation. And I had been making, a few years previous, I had been making guided meditation CDs for people to help them sleep. That was, I tinkered with that for a little while. So here I am through YouTube and I'm scrolling looking for guided meditation. And I found Dr. Brian Weiss. And little old man sitting in a chair up on a stage, and he's got this really calm voice, and he's talking people through a guided meditation, about 25 minutes. And so I listened to this. This is lovely. And, I grabbed the remote and I turn it off after 25 minutes. And I go upstairs and I fall into the bed and I sleep like a baby. And, I did 38 years of shift work. So it's, sleeping, once menopause happened, it was a challenge. So watching Dr. Brian Weiss help me sleep. And so each night that I was home, because I was still working at this point, each night that I was home, I would watch Dr. Brian Weiss do the guided meditation for 25 minutes, and he would relax you, and then you would just gradually go back through, and he'd say, now just if you wish, you can allow just pleasant scenes to come, and he'd take you back to childhood, to when you were a baby, and in your mother's womb, and I'd be relaxed, telling myself I was only going to wasn't going to allow any trauma, just going to allow, the intention was to allow peace, and I would sleep. 8 or 9 times doing this evening I sat down and watched, and as I'm in my bathrobe ready for bed, and as I moved my bum forward on the couch to get up, because I'm very short, so I have to scooch forward to reach the remote on my little coffee table. As I grabbed the remote, or as I took the remote and clicked off, I was on a battlefield. This physical vessel was not there. I was in the body of a man who was standing on a bit of a hill, like a rise, looking over a field where a battle had just taken place, and there were bodies all over the place. It was raining, and I had on this, like a long leather cape, cloak thing, and it was soaked. And so there was a mix of, initially, I'm in this body and I'm standing up. I didn't think, well, where's Jennifer? This was gone. It's dark, and I'm standing there, and this thing is soaked, and I'm coldish, and it's fucking raining. This is insane. And I'm looking at, when I realized what I was, there was somebody standing in front of me. And it was a guy with a, let's say, helmet. It was more of a functional hat, like a leather beanie, and it was fur trimmed just above his eyebrows. And he had a leather, like a heavy leather, like a vest type thing on over like a tunic. And he was dressed for cold weather, like he had layers on. And he had a fellow with really long dark hair, and he had dark skin, this guy. And he had a fellow by the hair of the head in one hand, and he had a sword, a curved big sword in his other hand, and he had the guy's head held up. And he was looking at me, for me to give the nod to dispatch this poor guy. And I looked at him, and the body, this that I was standing in, nodded. And as the sword, he swung the sword, and as the sword came close to the guy's neck, I came back into this body on the couch. Remote still in my hand. It's like, what was that? And she's tempted now to open her eyes, but we're going to keep them closed just to keep the story concise, so it'll help from her help her stay on track. So I'm sitting there on the couch. What the heck was that? So I got up at the time, and I went to get a piece of paper because I was afraid, like a dream segment. I wasn't sure what it was, but I thought, if I don't log some of this, because we kept at work, throughout my whole work career with the Coast Guard, we kept a written log, and eventually from a written log it went to a typed log. I knew that it felt like if I didn't record some of this, it would just vanish like a dream. So I grabbed a notepad and a piece of pencil or pencil, I think, because I wanted to sketch. And I knew that I'd seen that hat before, and the sword. I didn't know much of anything else other than, oh my God, the poor devil that had his head lopped off. But I wanted to, so I sketched the hat, and I sketched the sword. And I didn't tell anybody at the time. I didn't know who would believe you? Who was I going to tell? I didn't know what it was. I figured I'd just dig around on my own. So I did that, and a couple of years passed, and I got ready to, I don't remember what year that was, but I retired from the Coast Guard. And I retired from the Coast Guard in 2017. And in 2017, my husband, who you and I were separated and divorced, but I spent after we separated, I spent all that I knew at the time to try and get back together with him, and that wasn't to be. But in 2017, he found out he had stage 4 lung cancer, and in 2018, he passed. So while that's going on, and while he was struggling, I was investigating the Gerson therapy and ways that he could heal himself. I knew that healing was possible outside of the current drugs that the doctors were given, the oncologists were giving people in a toxic way that they were dealing with cancer at the time, and to a certain extent still are. And he wanted to follow he followed the doctor's advice and did all the, chemotherapy and all that. So around that time, I went to work for a medical clinic in Courtenay, and I was there in a admin assistant, helper capacity, where you were, doing urine tests and writing down results and getting the samples and stuff ready to send off to the lab, and taking, looking after storing the blood samples in the fridge and stuff, and doing the cleaning the autoclave and sterilizing equipment and all the associated stuff that go on at a medical clinic. And while I was doing that, I went to, I was still having some difficulty sleeping, and went back to YouTube one evening looking for a guided meditation. Of course, the first thing that came up was Dr. Brian Weiss. I was like, no, not having a look at that. I don't need to see any more of that nonsense. It scared the crap out of me at the time. And the next thing I found was, the very next thing that I found as I scrolled through was Dolores Cannon. And she was sitting up on the stage taking people through a guided meditation. And what she talked about, those past life fragments, the light bulb went on. And I realized, oh my God, that feels like what I experienced. So I watched a couple of her videos, and that night or the next morning, went online and went to her website and found a practitioner near me because I wanted to have a session done, and found Marilyn Dyke. It was amazing, down in Maple Ridge. She was a level 3 practitioner. And when I reached out to her, she emailed me back and she said, yes, I can do a session for you. It'll be this amount of money, and it'll be 18 months before I'm able to do that for you. I was like, 18, a year and a half. That's insane. And something clicked in that when I looked at our website, I remembered that I noticed training online. So I went back to that, and what I saw was that you had to read these books, and I love reading, so that wasn't an issue. Read Dolores's books. I remember 7, 8, 9 of Dolores's books, you had to read those, and then do the online training. That was the first part. So, like, you know what, I've been in communications my whole life. I've experienced some sort of past life fragment. So, yeah, I'm going to do this. So I slept on it, and when I woke up the next morning, I felt just as strongly that this was something I needed to do, so I did. That was Johnny passed in 2018, and as he was getting more and more sick, I was reading Dolores's books at the time. And in 2019, I was starting to do my first sets of clients. And in September of 2019, I went to Mount Shasta, California, and did a level 2 training. And I've been doing QHHT sessions ever since. Now, let's fast forward to go back to Jesus and the Essenes, and how that work came to be was that Dolores, stumbled upon. She was guided, or client was guided to her, like all clients are guided to the practitioners, whereby the client was able to relax quite deeply, quite quickly, and she was able to easily access her other lives. And one of those lives, after 3 months working with this girl, Dolores found, the client went to a lifetime where she was living in the community at Qumran. She was one of the Essene teachers, and she was quite young. In some of the sessions, she was quite young as Dolores was talking to her, or to him, through the client, which was a female. And it came about that this Essene teacher, whose name was Suddi, spent his lifetime learning and studying and learning to teach two students only. And those 2 students were Ben Zechariah and Ben Joseph. Now, Ben, before a name like Zechariah or Ben Joseph, Ben means the son of. Okay? Ben Zechariah was John the Baptist. Ben Joseph was Jesus, or Yeshua. And so Jesus and the Essenes, the first part of the book is a description of Suddi, his family, his lifestyle, Qumran, the Essenes, their culture and their community and their teachings, and how they gathered the knowledge, transcribed the knowledge from the different ancient languages, and passed that information on to the different Essene communities throughout the world. And how the information was written on different types of papyri, different materials, including copper scrolls. And some of those have been found as the Dead Sea Scrolls. And there's information in the book from Suddi, as well as from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and from other sources, like the people who passed on the stories in Britain, where Jesus and his father Joseph of Arimathea and his mother and all of them traveled and then went when they were set adrift in the boat to hopefully destroy them after Jesus was crucified. The information that came from Suddi about Jesus' crucifixion was gained after Suddi passed from the body. All of us, one of the first things that we were taught in QHHT, as well as the other affiliated practices that started from Dolores, are that you take a client, relax the client through the guided meditation basically that you do, and then the client is left to explores and talks to you as they're exploring, and they are taken through the life that they are seeing, or the area that they're looking at, to the end of that life. And the practice that we're taught, because it's so important, is to let them explore, take them to the last moment of that life. And a question that you ask clients when they are at the last day and the last moment of that life is, what is happening for the body now? And when you ask that question, you are showing them, you are enabling them to see that what are you looking at? The you that is inhabiting this physical vessel. Look at the body because it is outside. You are not the body. You are looking at the body. And so when we ask the client, when she asks the client, what's happening for the body now? The client, who is still in the body, describes what's happening for the body, as the body is, as the soul, as the energy that is the body, is about to leave. You get them to see what's happening for the body, and then the next line that we say to them is, in a variation of, depending on the situation, okay, so there's no pain or discomfort for the body now. Whatever has happened to the body has happened, and you are on the other side. So the energy then disconnects with the body and is able to leave and view the body from outside of it. So that is explored. What's happening for the body? What's happening around? Is there family around? If it's trauma, you're seeing that you are not the energy that is seeing, witnessing, is not what most people think of as themselves, just this body. You are outside of it then. When you've left the body, there's no discomfort. We are telling them that they don't have to experience any pain or discomfort. But now, let's go ahead. Whatever's happened to the body has happened. We're going to leave that now, and let me know where you are now. What's happening? I say, one of my lines is, and what's happening for you now? And there's been variations of, I'm in the room and I'm looking at the body. I'm up by the ceiling, I'm looking at the body. The person could have gone completely to another space where they're in the totality of all that is, and I'll ask them, what do you notice around you now? How are you feeling? In this space, you're able to do anything you want. There's no limitations there's no limitations to movement or where you can go. What do you get a sense that you'd like to do now, or what's happening for you now? So we take them to the death moment, through the death moment with no discomfort for the body, and then an observation point, and then move them to the next important piece, what's happening for you now. And so we'll explore that. So they get an opportunity to see that the energy that is you and that is actually me separates from the body and moves on to the next experience, the next learning, the next lifetime sometimes, a lot of times they're shown that they move toward a light or that they move up. They can feel themselves rising through the roof or rising up, and they're part of the cosmos. That's quite common as well. So the awareness and the energy that is you and I, that was Suddi, when he was there, after he had left the body and started talking about what was going to be happening to Yeshua, they don't pronounce the J in that culture. So what was happening to Yeshua, or Jesus, he said, just as the Bible talks about, the skies turned black, even though it wasn't evening. The skies turned black. The earth shook. He could see people running, and there were multitudes from the other side where he was, outside of the body. There were multitudes there holding space and witnessing. And the emotion that came through as he was speaking that, and the emotion that I found, which was outside of me, that was coming through as I was reading that portion of the book, it felt like Suddi was with me as I was reading. And it sounded, when I played the recording back, it sounded as if Suddi was speaking through me. And the book, Suddi in the book talks about how difficult it was, the emotion that was with him as he was describing what it was like to see someone he cared about so deeply, and that everybody that was present, both in form, in body, and out of body, knew that this person who had died was an innocent man, that he had done nothing wrong, and that there was something enormous happening. The skies turned black, the earth rumbled, the earth shook, and from the information that Suddi gave us, Yeshua, or Jesus, left the body at that time. And when he left the body, Suddi said, the head slumped forward, and he was then seen by Suddi and the other energies that were there, walking with his mother away from the scene. Now, one of the things that Yeshua, from the information that I've got through sessions, and through my experience, one of the reasons Jesus came here was to show us who we are, what we have access to when we live from a place of love and pure heart and service. And also that we, the energy, the soul that is we, does not die and stay in the ground with the body and rot away. And he showed that. That was shown not just by him, but those that worked with him from the higher realms, to have the body that was put in the tomb by Joseph of Arimathea, his uncle, his wealthy uncle, that went to Herod and claimed the body. They took the body and was embalmed, it was wrapped in shrouds and anointed with oils, laid in the tomb. Yeshua went and worked with the other masters, the ascended masters, and did what they did to cause the body to return to dust quicker. The process was accelerated, so on day 3, when the stone was rolled away, there was nothing left of the body. The shrouds, the wrappings, were still there in place, but the body was gone. And what Jesus wanted to show was that, and then he appeared to his disciples with holes in his hands and his feet where they drove the stakes through, that we do not die when the body dies. There is more. And there were some that were ready to hear that at the time. And so the word, the way, was shown through his life and through his death. Now, the QHHT practitioners also get to experience talking to people as they move from the body and move to the other side of what we used to call the veil. That's where the information came from, through Suddi, after he had left the body, and through a QHHT session that Dolores did with her client. Jesus was crucified and left the body and is now an ascended master. So the book, that's what the book talks about. And it goes on to follow the life of how Jesus reappeared to his followers. And then it talks about their experience going forward. And toward the end of the book, Dolores talks about a book in her investigations that she found that was written by an English gentleman back in the 60s, 68, I think, called The Drama of the Lost Disciples, and I read that as well. And that led me to the tin mines outside Cornwall in England that Joseph of Arimathea went to with his fleet of ships, and there's some kind of connection to the Tarshish people. They were Phoenician background, and they were master sailors. And so they had these big ships. And the way Suddi talked about Jesus, or Yeshua's, he had red hair, and he belonged to, his line was part of it was the line of David, but there was a Phoenician thread through that. And so Joseph of Arimathea, Jesus' uncle, Jesus went with him to the west coast of England, to these mines in Cornwall, and stayed. And on some of Jesus' travels as a younger boy, sometimes his mother went with him. And there are stories and songs in that area of England that talk about this. And one of them was a song that I found, and I heard Maddie Pryor sing it. It was called Joseph Was a Tin Man. And so the history continues of Yeshua and the apostles and going forward, and what happened to the apostles and where they spread and the churches that they did, and how, anyway, the rest of the story. It's quite detailed. And there's talks of the Druids that were in that area in Avalon, how the descendants of the Druids came from the place, what Suddi talked about as either Babylon or somewhere in that area, the men of Ur, and he talks about the Elohim, and there's huge amounts of information in that book, Jesus and the Essenes, as well as the Drama of the Lost Disciples. So there's many books referenced that Dolores found that she makes reference to in Jesus and the Essenes. So I encourage you, if you're interested in this and you're still with me, to get your hands on a copy of that book or investigate for yourself, because you are, just like if you're sitting here watching me now talk about this and it resonates, you may want to find out more, and you can go to that book, Dolores' book, or you can look at that book, The Drama of the Lost Disciples. There's more to the story. There's much more to the story than we've previously been told. So I had been, when I did that last, can I open my eyes now? Okay. Hi. When I did the last video about not being able to read Jesus of the Essenes for you because of the copyright, I left it. It felt like I'd closed that door. And yesterday I found a video of a YouTube channel that I recommended people watch. And the gentleman was interviewing a fellow who said that Jesus lived to be 107 and had children. And what I got I was taken aback. And so before while I was settling down before I went to bed last night, I asked if there was anything that they wished that I would be able to share with you through this medium, through this YouTube. And I heard, you can't read the book, but you can talk about your experience with the book. So I've worked with people who lived hundreds of years ago. It's part of what we do, and hundreds of years of what we understand as the past, as well as hundreds of years into the future. I've done that with the QHHT work, as have all the QHHT practitioners. Dolores was just one of the crew that were working in that field and able to bring through and develop that information. Dr. Brian Weiss was another one, and Charmian Redwood also was developing her practice similar to Dolores's, and she was in England doing it, and Dolores was here in North American continent in Arkansas doing it. So the information, I suppose, the information is coming out. What you're ready for, you will be guided to, and I hope that helps for the people that I know that, or I understand, felt like they were left hanging when I had to stop reading that book. So that's a little bit more information about what was in the book, and certainly not the whole of it. But the book is, the information that was in that book, Suddi's information, it's important that that's known right now by anybody that's ready for it. Tick. Oh my gosh. Take care, folks. We are not alone. We are not alone. Ask for whatever help you need, and you'll be guided to it. Thank you for being with me. Thanks for carrying the work forward and continuing on. Yeah. You are divinely guided. We are all divinely guided. This I know. Okay, take care. See you again.